Publishing for Profit podcast is brought to you by Ghostwriters & Co. Earn more money by publishing better content and learn how to increase your thought leadership so you can build your brand. Head over to ghostwritersandco.com for more information. That's ghostwritersandco.com. And now, your host, Joel Mark Harris.
Hello and welcome to a very special edition of the Publishing for Profit podcast. This is the 50th episode, and this is your host, Joel Mark Harris. Today we are interviewing one of my really good friends, Hussein Hallak, and we're doing something a little bit different where we're alternating questions. So he gets to interview me a little bit, I get to interview him a little bit. Hussein is a very interesting serial entrepreneur. He helps startups, small businesses. His main company is called Unleashed Adventures. So we talk a lot about podcasting, we talk about tech, we talk about startups, and we even talk about a subject that is very close to my heart, which is journalism. So hopefully you enjoy this episode. Without further ado, here is Hussein Hallak. Hussein, welcome to the 50th episode of Publishing for Profit. How are you today?
I'm doing very well. I was just fixing my face to make sure where are those wrinkles? Can I hide those wrinkles? That's what I was doing there, in case you're wondering. Thanks for having me.
So I wanted to do something a little bit different. Normally my usual process is send you questions beforehand and you get some time to think about it. But this is a bit of a hot seat issue. So how I want to structure this, and we may fall flat on our faces in this, and I may need to re-edit everything, but we'll try it out, see how it goes. Cool. I'll ask you a question, and then you can answer, and then ask me a question. It could be anything you like. So now's your chance. If there is some burning thing that you wanted to know about me, that you wanted to get out into the world and on record, now is your chance.
Oh, that sounds interesting and exciting.
Yeah.
Let's see.
So I've been doing this podcast for a year now. It's been a year this week, and I've learned a lot, and I thought I'd do something a little bit special. And one of the things is like, who do I want back on my podcast? And I couldn't think of a better guest than my good friend Hussein, who I've known, for I think it's been 5 years. I've been pestering him ever since. And I want, you're a serial entrepreneur, and I want to talk about one of your latest projects that you're working on. And that's with NFTs, which are non-fungible tokens. And you are partnering with Daily Hive to produce like a art marketplace. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Cool. Like go into the hot stuff right away.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully you're not publishing that before we announce it. But there I would say. So I've been fascinated with the world of blockchain for a while right now, and NFTs is one of these innovations that are made possible with blockchain. People collect all the time. We collect all kind of stuff. We like to hold on to stuff that I think have value for us, whether it's fun, whether it's the cool thing to do because everybody else is doing it. Stuff like that. From baseball cards, we were just talking about stamps. I never thought of myself as a collector, but when I come back, it's like I've always collected stuff, like stamps, or I remember coins as well. I was fascinated with history, and I remember like being excited about getting a stamp. I can't remember, I can't imagine how geeky that was. So I think the biggest thing is people like to collect, and what blockchain technology has brought with NFTs or non-fungible tokens is the ability to authenticate that thing that you have. So in that time, we used to rely on, it's very hard to, I think at that time, to fake stamps, maybe. I don't know if somebody will fake stamps because but we rely on the person selling it to us to tell us the story and where we got it from and kind of achieve to this is authentic or old, or I mean, it's not like historic or, but at the time it was like that. Right now with technology, we can rely on blockchain technology so that the certificate that is there for everyone to see. And when it enables you to exchange it and give somebody that certificate. In the real world, you would have to kind of assign it to somebody and create another certificate and probably go to a governing body that verifies that. In a blockchain space, you can look at the chain of custody and see who owned this and who sold it to whom and who sold it to whom, until you get to today where you're actually buying it. So you can verify all of that. And that was made possible with technology, and with the marketplaces it made it possible to exchange it between people. So now you can sell it to anyone in the world. You're not limited by vicinity or who's around you, and you're not limited to well, you have to exchange that. Plus there are a lot of stuff that are digital. We're talking about physical stuff. Now you have stuff that are digital that is very hard to prove authenticity or ownership. You can, somebody would say, hey, I created this meme, or I created this this thing, but and you might be allowed to use it free online, but how do you prove that now you own it? Let's say you want your name attached to it in some shape or form. That is also what NFT makes possible as an innovation, because of the blockchain technology, because of the ability of to save data in a database that is ledger based, basically just like a paper where you write down every transaction that happened. So that's like my spiel on the
Yeah.
NFT. So, which brings us to the kind of what we're doing with it. And the exciting thing here is that it is, because of this possibility, it gives creators, artists, which one of my early startups in 2006 was helping artists be online at the time, from the Middle East, which was something very novel at the time. I built the largest marketplace for Arabic art, and I love helping artists, love working with creators. They are kind of the people that create, but not a lot of them have business savvy, in the sense that they are focused completely on the art of the act of creation. They rely on other people in the community to take care of their let's say sales, how much percentage they make. And then a lot of times they have no way to track that. So if you sold something when you're just a starting artist, and then it becomes, as you continue to raise your reputation, becomes more let's say expensive, and people want to own it, you get nothing out of that. I think there are a few cities around the world, maybe I'm mistaken, London and New York, where you get 10% if it's sold there, but it's very hard to track. Now, as a digital artist, and there are a lot of them, you can track who's selling where your sales are, and you can make money off of secondary sales, which is huge, because that actually may end up be more than the first sale that you sold it. So that's offers new opportunities for artists. And what we want to do, we were talking, I published my guide on NFTs on Daily Hive. We had a conversation. The founders there are awesome. We know each other, we're friends, and they reached out and said, well, what do you think? Like, can we do something with this NFT thing? We and they're a big art advocates. So they said, yeah, we can do that. And we've structured a deal where the artist can get most of the revenue. And we're planning for a launch that helps local artists in Canada and many different cities, so that, especially because I think they were one of the most impacted by this COVID kind of thing that took our world by surprise now. Still a year onwards, we start like, can we get rid of it? So yeah, that's what's happening. Too
Awesome.
much information?
No, not at all. Now, do you have a
Is it
question
my
for
turn?
me?
Is it my
It's
turn?
your
Yeah,
turn.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Cool. Why do you still do this? Like you said, you're doing it for a year. Is it just momentum? What are you getting out of, let's say, doing these podcasts?
That's a good question. So I would say it's not I don't have a financial incentive to do the podcast. I'm not making tons of money off doing it. I think for me, it's the joy and the fun of actually doing them. I graduated from journalism school, and part of the reason I love journalism is just being able to interview different people and to understand their perspective, get their stories. And that's really what I am able to get from this podcast. So I get to connect with you. I get to meet new people who are up to some really cool stuff. I interviewed a money coach or money therapist, she called herself. I had never even heard of that term before. And so I got to learn a little bit about money therapy and really get to listen to why she does what she does and how she helps people. And I've heard so many amazing stories about people who have been in depression, people who've had weight problems and have managed to climb their way out of whatever problem or issue they've had and to live a very impactful, meaningful life through what they're doing now and sharing their story. And so I am able to, I guess, take what they have, what their learnings are, and I can help them spread their message through the medium of podcasting, which is really cool. And yeah, I've met some really great entrepreneurs who I haven't been able or would not be able to connect with. And sometimes like even deep in relationships. So you and I, we did a TEDx event where we did all the marketing for it. And I basically just went back through the list of people who were speakers, and I got to interview them. And, I talked to people who I haven't talked to in, I don't know, like 5 years, I would say, and reconnect with them and learn what they're up to now and learn how they're doing and how they're coping with COVID. So it's been a really great experience to be able to, reconnect with old people, old friends, old colleagues, and meet some new people.
Did you just say old people?
Old people.
Old people. Like,
old friends.
That's why you're connecting with me. I know I have some wrinkles, but I'm not that old yet. Okay. So do I follow up or are you like it's a question?
It's my turn now.
Okay, darn it. So many questions.
Can you talk a little bit about the founding of your company, Unleashed Ventures, why you decided to start it, and what is the meaning behind the name?
Oh, okay. Good question. So the reason why I started Unleashed Ventures is there was me and there was my team. We are the team so it's a bunch of people that I met throughout since 2016, and enjoyed working with them on several projects. So I have a philosophy when I work with people, is that you work with people by working with people. So it doesn't work for everyone. So because I've had the challenges of trying to work with people based on their resume or their history, and what ends up happening is, while that may speak to their professional ability and may speak to the what they're capable of doing, it doesn't speak to who they are as a person. So it doesn't say is if we're gonna enjoy working together or we're gonna have a good time or a horrible time. So I ended up kind of wanting to. The biggest desire is I want to work with people that I like working with. I realize that I can do a ton of stuff, and I have a high opinion of myself. So I was like, I can do anything. So why don't? What is the thing that I want to do? I Life is too short to have drama, and drama usually comes from people, and you can't prevent against problems, but there are certain problems that are really dramatic. For example, the breakdown of a relationship. Like, you can have the disagreements. The people I work with, my friends and my co-founders, we have disagreements all the time, but it's not dramatic in the way like, oh my god, this is like the end of a relationship, or I can't believe you're doing this kind of thing. I hate those. Like, whenever I see them on TV, I think those those drama series. I was like, why the heck did they do that? I don't know if you get into that. It's like, are they stupid? Why are they doing this? So I don't want that in life. Like, it's good to see it on TV. Maybe sometimes it's annoying even on TV, honestly, because I hate stupid people and and people acting stupid. But so I didn't want that. I think that's the crux of everything that I do. So I had I had around me a group of people that I really enjoyed their presence, enjoyed their company, and enjoyed building stuff with them. So we had some fun, and the good thing about that is you would recognize that there's a great thing where the success or the failure doesn't matter. And what I mean by that is we understand that certain things will be successful and certain things will not. Just just and luck has to do a lot with it. Like, you can do the best of your ability and then things may not work out. So I wanted people who are in tune with kind of the flow of life, in the sense that you make mistakes, you try things, you throw shit at the wall, some will stick, some will not. Like, it's as simple as that. Anybody who tells you, I think I'm happy to sit with anyone, from the ones that we dub the smartest people in the world to the least smartest people in the world, who have money, who have status, who have achieved a lot of things. I would dare them to say this is not hugely dependent on luck. There is a luck element in it. You do something and it's at the right time, right? You meet the right people and it works. Of course, you have to work your ass off in certain element, but there's still an element of luck. And if you don't have that at certain times, it may not work. So I think that is um, that is where it comes from. And I had those people around me. So we started a company called Next Centrum together. We raised funding, and then we realized there's something we love doing, which is always creating new products, always building something new. And we didn't want to create 10 companies all the same team. Like, that doesn't work. So we said, can we create a company that's more like a playground, where we allows us the flexibility of building our own stuff and working with others that we like to help them, because most of the time we will enter and build something to a certain point and then it's off to somebody else. And I learned that as well from my work with Launch Academy and my work in the tech community. Is there are different players in the community that would help a company at different stages of that company. So it's never yours to control. It's kind of like your kind of like my kids, where I can do a part but the school has to do a part, their friends have to do a part. Like, you can never control fully, even if you want to. I'm a control freak, so I want to. So I think that is where it started, and that's why we did it. And the reason between behind the World Unleashed, the World Unleashed has been with me, I think, for over 12, 15 years now. I don't know where it started, but there's something about I think I have an idea where it started. It has to do with coaching and working with others. So what I found is people have amazing capabilities. Like, I've met people who most of the great things in the world are done by great like ordinary people who do great things. That's the principle. So it's not the theory of the great person, for example, doesn't apply here. Like, it's bullshit, I think. There are definitely people who are super smart, people like there are, but they're very, very rare. And aside from that, all the great stuff that are done in the world that we use every day are done by ordinary people. Like, Steve Jobs is great, but he didn't design, the chip in the Mac. He didn't. He kind of paved the vision, but there had to be a ton of brilliant engineers who had to do the work, right? And they have to come together, and we have a piece of kind of technological marvel in our hand. So I think that a lot of ordinary people. Now, the thing is, we're always leashed or caught in our own thinking, in our own beliefs. So unleashed be kind of removing yourself, or removing all these chains, or all the things that are keeping you, holding you back from realizing your full potential. So, and that's what we do that at Unleash Ventures. And everything that I do in life is really about working with others, friends, people I run into, anybody who run into me and had a conversation that they didn't expect. Like, I would ask deep questions like, what is going on in your life, and why you're not doing well with your girlfriend. Like, somebody I just met, like, I would not afraid to go into deep topics. My intention is to unleash that person from whatever is holding them back. I just see brilliance all around, and I want people to be able to experience that. So that is where it comes from, and that's what Unleash Venture is all about: is really helping ventures and startups to remove all kind of things that are holding them back from realizing their full potential and adding value to their customers, the market that they're targeting. Um, yeah, and you asked me kind of what is it that what was the second part of the
Well,
question?
who do you serve? Like, who would your
Okay.
ideal client be? I know it's a
Well, we work with startups that are early stage. So we like to work with early stage. It's the most difficult stage in the life of a startup because there's no guarantee of success. Like there's less of a guarantee of success. Startups and businesses have a lot of chances for things to go wrong. The early you are in the process, the more likely things are going to go wrong, or you're, likely not to succeed. So we like to work with startups at that stage because it offers the biggest problems and the biggest challenges, and we get excited about that. So we work with entrepreneurs at that stage, and we help them uh, figure out stuff. We jump in as co-founders for them. We help them figure out stuff. So these are the companies that we like to work with and help, and that's the kind of value we start adding, and building ourselves the project and jumping on joint ventures. So it's a flexible entity that allows our team to be flexible in pursuing anything that we think, hey, this is cool, let's go after it.
awesome. All right,
My turn.
now your
Yeah.
turn.
All right. So I've always been fascinated about your ability to write, and I think we spoke about that in the previous, like when I interviewed you, I think. But right now, well, you're writing a new book. I think it's a huge, it's like a massive epic of things. Um, what are some of the things that you were expecting to go smooth compared on your experience, like, I got this, you had that feeling like, I got this is like easy, these other things are going to be hard, that turned out to be extremely hard and kind of frustrated you and drove you out of your mind, kind of like, I can't believe this is difficult. Is there such a thing? Have you faced something like that? What are they?
Yeah, so just to, I guess, kind of recap what I'm doing. I'm writing
Yeah.
a historical fiction book. It is about the Second Punic War, and so that is when Carthage invaded Rome. Hannibal, he's one of the most famous generals in history. He actually marched his troops over the Alps and into Italy, surprising Rome. And he won several very decisive victories, and he basically defeated a much superior Roman army. Um, Hannibal's army was made up of mercenaries and different tribes, and it was really basically they're kind of patchworked together. And it wasn't a professional army like Rome had. They were one very cohesive unit, and they were very organized. But Hannibal, through his ingenious and through his just leadership skills, was able to defeat Rome, at least at the beginning. And then Rome basically wore Hannibal down and his army, and eventually they won the war. But for me, it's a very interesting time period, and not a lot of books. There's not a lot of fiction around that time period. I would say when you think of Rome, like Roman literature or Roman fiction, you think of Caesar around the time when the Roman Empire was founded. You think about Spartacus. Spartacus was the famous gladiator who basically sparked a revolt. And you think about the Roman Empire. What's that movie with Russell Crowe, Gladiator? You think about those movies, but you don't really think about Hannibal very often. So I was really interested in that. And so basically what I did was, it actually turned out to be a lot longer than I anticipated. I thought I knew it was going to be a long book, but it turned out to be a lot longer than I initially anticipated. And I thought that this is the seventh fiction book I have written. So I thought, I have all the tropes down pretty well. I knew how to write characters. I knew how to write scenes. I knew how to follow a story structure, and especially since it's based on historical fact. So I knew the story going in. So I thought plot I would not have a trouble with, because I just followed the historical facts and what happened after this, and this, and then it would be an easy way to write it. But turned out that was not the case. And so I actually had to stop several times, because I was just like, I can't figure out what happens next. And I was like, and I thought that was very strange. First off, because I've done this, several times before, and I thought that, I had the plot down packed. And secondly, because it's based on historical fact, so I knew like what should come next. This battle should come next, and this event should come after that, and so forth, right? But that wasn't the case, and I've sort of like, I've not rewritten history, but I've changed things around to make it more, to make the story flow a little bit better, and to make it more succinct. I would say like I'm on like the final lap of the first draft, and so I'm pretty close to finishing a good, I would say pretty solid first draft, and it's clocking in at over 600,000 words. So I mean, that's longer than War and Peace. That's longer than Lord of the Rings. It's longer than The Stand by Stephen King. And what I think I'm going to do is to break it up into 3 separate novels and do it and release it that way, and that will make it a little bit more easily digestible, I would say. But I think the challenge, like, just go back to your question, I think the challenge is, I plot everything out before I write it. So I have a nice structure and I have a nice outline of how things should go. But it's interesting, as you write, things come up and you kind of follow where the character takes you. So it doesn't quite always follow the structure that you had anticipated. And you have to, like, that's part of creativity, I believe, is really going with the flow a little bit and seeing where the characters take you, where the storyline takes you. And things have definitely shifted, and characters have sort of surprised me and done things that I didn't really think that they were capable of doing. And I know that kind of sounds surprising or kind of interesting, because you're like, well, don't you make them happen, Joel? And the answer is yes, but I think that's kind of, that gets down to the very like heart of creativity, is that you can plan things out as much as possible, but really you need to let your creativity take over and go with the flow, and not be so rigid in the storyline or in how things should turn out. And I think definitely the story is better for it, and it is it's more interesting the way that it is now, opposed to the way that I had initially planned it. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, I have so many more questions.
You want to ask them?
What?
Go ahead, ask.
Well, how much would you want to be paid to put me at the center of the story?
I would
That's
not.
a question you never expected.
No, that's true.
And suddenly Hussein Hallak came and saved
Yeah.
and became emperor, and got a lot of money. Hey, I'm not sure that I can get that in life, so why not get it in story at least?
So it's not about, the thing with creativity is not about the money. It's not about being paid to do it. I am not getting paid. Hopefully, obviously I hope the book does well and I can make some money off, and and I hope that it will be turned into a miniseries. That's my goals. But it's really about just the fun and being in the playground, and having the freedom to do what you want. So I don't think you can't put a price tag on that. I'm sorry, Hussein. So
Darn it.
yeah.
I had hopes, but hey. Okay, your turn.
All right. What should I ask? Okay. So with all your different ventures, I know that you do a lot of content marketing. I'm going to bring it back to business a little bit.
Hmm.
You do a lot of articles on Medium, and you're writing a book, and so this obviously takes time and effort and resources. How do you think about content marketing, and um, where is that placed in the overall structure of even your life or your business or your marketing plan?
Yeah, it's for me. It's a very like it's a topic that I've thought about, and it's strange for me. That's how I would put it. The reason is for me, writing is a form of expression, and I love to write. So I love to write and express. Like I get an idea, and I want to get it out there. And the challenge is if I like a lot of the stuff that move me has to do with a lot of political contentious stuff. So I like to write, and I like to basically curse and swear at people for the stupidity and the idiocy that I see, um, especially right now with the vaccines and the anti-science kind of rhetoric. And yeah, it just drives me crazy, and I can't stand. Uh, there are people who are genuinely, let's say, um, don't understand. Let's put it this way, or their level of intelligence cannot comprehend certain elements, which I understand. And these are not the people I talk about. I'm talking about people who are um, they have the level of intelligence and choose to basically uh, act like idiots. These people drive me crazy. So that is mostly my drive to writing is usually an emotional one. I feel about something. I even in business, like this is not has to do just with political stuff, but political stuff has become like intertwined as well sometimes with business. And because I'm in let's say in a first world country where I can express my opinions even more freely than anywhere else in the world, it's kind of what I end up doing. So that is what drives me toward writing. Is I see an idea, I see something, and I become passionate. For example, one of my writings is about one of the entrepreneurs that I mentored took her own life. When I heard the news, I had to write, so I wrote, and that article kind of talk about the challenges that entrepreneurs face, and I literally told people to fuck off, uh, who actually want to want to come in and tell entrepreneurs, like they act as supporters for entrepreneurs, but they're not, from family members to whatever. Like I was writing, and I'm usually emotional when I'm writing. Like there's a lot that I pour there. There are stuff where I write because I want to inform and educate. So there's a purpose for my writing. It's never, uh, whenever I try to write because I need to write, for example, well, my business need, I need to have an article every week. That never worked out. Like it never worked out for me. So I think I'm a big believer of being driven by passion because it shows. It's kind of like talking because you have to talk. Like, for example, saying I have to have an episode of that's why I don't do as much YouTube videos, for example. Like I've been asked by my team, other people, to say, you know what, like why don't you do YouTube videos? Why are you just doing just articles for sorry, just interviews with others? And my answer is, like, if I have nothing to say, I don't want to just create a video for the sake of it. I tried it. It just seems so, like, so made up. I just can't. I have huge respect for people who can, let's say, produce content every day, but it's not. Like, I like to have a conversation. So for me, the way I produce content is usually has to do with others. I tried being myself and talking to myself, but I love the question. I like um, the I think what I like is the unexpectedness and the joy of discovery and the joy of not knowing what's gonna, like, in this conversation. I have no idea what you're gonna ask, so I like that. And I like the the ability to create in the moment the answer, thinking and creating. That's what brings me joy. Like I light up when I try, like, oh, how do you figure that out? But to have a specific script or a specific idea to talk about, I end up rambling, and I don't like it. Like there's no joy if there is no kind of interaction. There's no joy for me. It has to be I'm on stage teaching. One of the hardest thing um, is to create courses. Like I have a lot to say, as you can tell. Talk a lot. I have a lot to say, and I have a lot to educate people. And I do believe that I add enormous amount of value. But unless there's a question and unless there's a purpose, there's nothing driving me. So when I'm doing a course, there is kind of the questions, like there's somebody who's needing to advance, and I'm doing that. But when there's a video, what am I doing? Like, what am I talking about? So I think there has to be a question. I think for me, it's about the conversation. So that is what my approach is with content marketing. Is there, if there is an open question, if there's an let's say somebody has a challenge that I can help them with, that's my entrepreneurial thinking going into content marketing. And I know that limits me, because I can definitely produce 10 times more content. The other challenge is time. And I know we're like, you're asking me how I do that. um, Time is definitely an aspect, because certain pieces of content, like sometimes I sit down and the piece of content just is there, like it in half an hour, like bang, like I can't believe I wrote that. Sometimes a piece of content may take 2 months to be written, sometimes more. There's an article I was writing since I think 6 months now, about Trump and America and stuff like that, and it's not finishing. Like I stopped, I was stuck. It's not finishing, just like a book. So um, because I know what I want to say, but it's not coming out. I don't know how to explain it otherwise. So I think with content marketing, I think what people need to ask themselves, if you are like, if my philosophy and the way I think of things apply to you and you resonate with it, is first ask yourself, what is it that you want to say? Not the content itself, but after someone reading that content, what are they getting? So looking at content like a product, and that product needs to create and deliver value in some way. And what is the value you get out of it? Like for me, when writing an article, it's sometimes an act of catharsis, where you actually kind of letting go of something or saying something and putting it out there. There's a reason why. um, and for some, if you're looking for how many clicks, I mean, I care about that. I care how many people saw it. But the reason I look at engagement is kind of a feedback loop to tell me, have I communicated something in value? But if you're looking at it as like, okay, that would mean business, I think that's the wrong reason to do content marketing. Content is just another product that you put out there to help people and to show them how, to give them a taste of the help they would get if they use their product. That's how I think about it. And if that's not the case, I would recommend that you shut up. Don't put that. I mean, we have a ton of content is worthless. I've had to sift through that to find, an article about a topic that adds value, and an article about a topic that adds value is amazing. Like that's, you kind of hold reverence. So for me, the act of writing is somehow uh, just like the act of conversation. You have to add value. It has to be about the other person, even though it's writing and it's one way. You have to have sound that you've listened. So that's why if it's coming from a question, or you're solving a problem, or you're addressing something that people would want addressed, that's where it becomes well. And that's why I'm sporadic in my writing. I don't care. Like I don't have to. And I think the best thing that I've ever done, and if you're someone like me, the best thing that you can ever do is have conversations with people and record those and turn those into pieces of content. So when I launched my podcast, I didn't think about it, but within like a couple of months, it recorded around 40 episodes, which is a lot. So that I have now content for the next 3 months of like just releasing those. and I can have conversations all day. So I would say do something that comes naturally and easy for you. Don't confine yourself to the forms of content. TikTok didn't work for me. Like I tried a couple of videos, even one of them without audio. I was like, I didn't even care about removing that. Like honestly, for someone, I think that's a big no-no for someone who's a marketer who cares about their personal brand. But it's like, you know what? I couldn't give a shit, honestly. Like I'm not a TikToker. I don't like TikTok. Like the whole culture of it, all of that. Good. If that's the place for you, great. If it works for you. But even if some of my audiences are there, no. I want a place where I can communicate in a form that works for me. And for me, the one that works is long form, YouTube kind of a podcast. I wanted people to see us. I wanted people to do like that's what worked for me so far. And it's also one last thing I want to say. It's also the to find that it's an art of discovery. So try different things and then find where you find yourself best. Um, and don't overdo it. Just start like at the end of the day, you're talking to people. So how would you do it naturally without the platform, without the form? How do you do it in everyday life? And try to find a way to transform that to something that fits in online. Does
I
that
think those are
answer your
great
question?
points. Awesome.
Cool.
Hmm.
So, uh, back at you. You're someone who help a lot of people with their content. I know you ghostwrite. You ghostwrite for me as well. What is it? And there's a reason I think for sometimes using ghostwriting. For me, it's time and also the play. Like I love working with you on the book because not because I don't know how to write. I think actually I'm a very good writer. Actually, I think I'm an excellent writer. Honestly, not to be too full of myself, but I think one of the biggest challenges for me is not having a conversation when I'm writing. When I'm writing, it's just me and the paper, and that stops me. So especially on projects that require a lot of work, like a book, I enjoy that. What is it for you that you've seen? Why should people like why some people that you've worked with that produce great results should come to a ghostwriter and work with somebody like you? What's the added value? And I'm not talking just about the business. I'm talking about like the whole process and what they can gain from it, aside from a piece of content they can publish.
Hmm. That's a great question. I think first off, yeah, I do think you're a great writer, and a lot of my clients are actually they are great writers. It's not that they can't write. I think you really hit the nail on the head that it's having that conversation and having somebody to bounce ideas off of, and then um, I'm obviously not an expert in all fields, but what I am really good at is critical thinking, and to really come at it from a critical eye and see things. Let's take the blockchain for example. I'm not an expert in blockchain, you are, and so having like I guess maybe that filter or somebody who can think about blockchain in a different way from somebody who has had your experience with blockchain is
Mm,
very valuable, because it allows you to better communicate with your audience who are not experts. They haven't spent the time that you have in learning the ins and outs of blockchain. And so I kind of look at myself as a filter or amplifier, and I do both. And so I think it's a combination of those two key skills that allow somebody who is an entrepreneur who has a message that they want to tell to an audience, to the tribe, whatever you want to call it. um, it really allows them to clarify that message and to make
mm,
it better. So I think though that's the real skill, and also sometimes they know exactly what they want to say, but they don't know how to say it, and they haven't quite figured out what the best way of saying it is, or how to like kind of hit the key points that they need to. I think apart from that, there's obviously like saving the time. You referenced that earlier. For somebody who's busy helping their clients, who has, they're running their business, they're doing a ton of other things. So they don't necessarily have the time to sit down and write, even though like yourself, they're great writers. It's not that they can't do it. It's just, it's a time factor for them. And so I'm able to help in that way as well. So just to kind of recap, I think it's the ability to clarify the message and put it out there in an easy, digestible way to understand for people who are not experts or haven't been following a topic as closely as the actual author. So I think that's really the benefit of a real, like, and we're not talking about ghostwriters you find on Fiverr or Upwork or whatever, those people will,
those.
yeah, yeah. And they don't, I mean, they might save you time, they might save you money. If you
No, they
find,
don't. They don't, because it challenges the and I know the word quality gets thrown around, but it's not really that. Like, the quality of writing is the eyes of the beholder, but there's a certain richness, I think,
mm,
depth in writing an article that drives, for me, drives every word that I write. So they're not the same, for sure.
yeah, no, for sure. And I would agree with that. So find I'll say the quality again. I think it's important to find a native English speaker, probably somebody in North
Ouch.
America, or
Ouch.
you count as a native.
How
You're an
come?
honorary native
No, no.
American,
Okay.
native English speaker. I was going to
Everybody
say
thinks that
American.
I studied somewhere in the States, or like in an American school somehow.
Yeah, I could totally see that. I can see why they would say
It's a lot
that
of
for sure.
sitcoms.
And that's how a lot of people learn English, is through
It's actually
sitcoms.
sitcoms and music. It's
Yeah.
because songs, because you think of it, poetry and jokes give you the spirit of the language, right?
Mm,
More so than reading somewhere, because when you read long form, is there's something else, like you can read and you have time to think, but a poetry, you have to understand the kind of image behind that, and so there's so much in that. So there's the description, where like somebody's describing, when you're reading a book, they're describing something, so they're taking you to a place. But in poetry, or in music in that case, um, you have to understand what they mean by, like, say, my back's against the wall, for example. Like, that's
mm,
not a description. Like, what does it mean your back's against the wall? And especially that comes from a lot of history and culture in that language. So I was like, my back's against, I don't have that. For example, in Arabic, it might be, oh, you cornered me.
yeah.
Like, it's a different description, and something like that creates like, oh, so now, and the thing is, when you hear it the first time, you don't know what it is, and it's not like there was internet at the time. But when you hear it used in different contexts, it's like I had to learn English how babies learn English,
Mm,
because I've actually refused to use, throughout my life, I refused to use, I don't know if I ever told you that, and maybe that's kind of your question. But anyway, I'll just digress and talk about that. So what happened is, I learned English way before my peers, because I was in a private school and we learned English. So I learned English from Oxford English, but that was it. That was the structure. That was structured. English was never spoken around me. All of that. However, I loved movies. I loved movies. Loved cartoons, and watching those at a time before we had just one channel in Syria. Watching those and going to the movie, my mom used to take me to the movies. I hated translation, because I would look at translation. Translation, obviously, a lot of it is censored. For example, like "fuck you" is like, it was like "god damn you." That's how they kind of like. I was
oh,
like,
I'll get you.
that's not what they're saying. So anyway, so it's like, I don't pay attention. I actually go out of my way to get movies that are not translated. So I like
Mm,
to watch movies without translation, because I think they take away from the spirit of the movie. But a lot of these, what end up happening, a lot of the things I don't understand, but when you hear them again and again and again, for example, the word contemplate, I remember hearing that word a lot of times, and I never really understood what it means. But then at a certain point, it clicked for me. It's like, oh, contemplate. So I never had to look what that means in Arabic, and that's why a lot of times when I actually, one of the companies that I opened is a company that does translation. My translation was different, and my translation I helped in business. I would not translate literally. I would translate the meaning, and I was very different, and we were very successful when I did that. It's because of that, because I don't care about what the actual translation is, and I'm actually discovering that even though I understand what you mean, but I can't translate it. So that is how I did. And what I used, I read the book, what is it? The Conversations with God, for example.
Hmm.
A difference, other people will read it and they will look for every word and what it means, because it had some God explaining for him. It had some very, very complex, I would say, architect like things that they mean. Like there was a lot of play on meanings of words. And what I did is, even though there are sentences and words I didn't understand, I just plowed through it. And what ends up happening, it will click for you at certain point. So that is my journey with language, and that's why I think there are a lot of times what I can. I really, there are areas where I can't express myself in Arabic,
Hmm.
that I can express myself in English, especially with business, because in Arabic I never read Arabic in Arabic business books. All so I can write poetry in Arabic, and I do. I love poetry in Arabic. I love the Arabic language. Poetry is amazing because we are. That's our history. We are a nation of poets. That's how we started. So Arabic language was not even written. It was transferred through poetry and through like long poems that people kind of pride themselves on how they memorized it. So uh, that is how like it progressed. But there was no literature in English while I was learning. Sorry, in business when I was learning business. So most of my readings in business are in Arabic, in English. So what ends up happening is when I want to express myself in business, it's easier for me to express myself in English. I don't even think, like right now, I'm not thinking what I want to say. That's, I think, another thing is I don't think in Arabic what I want to say, translate it to English, and then I do it. I'm
Hmm.
completely like thinking and talking English. Even at home, we speak in English more than Arabic. So I think that's kind of how I got here, because a lot of people ask me like, how come you seem like you grew up in Canada or grew up in America or something
Yeah.
like that? Sitcoms.
I think that yeah,
I love sitcoms, by the way. They're incredible. Like they're
the nuances of a language are very interesting. The example you gave with uh, being cornered or being up against the wall, right?
yeah,
So if I said, Hussein, you put my back up against the wall,
yeah,
that would be almost a positive because that means that I have only to go forward, right?
mm,
But if I said, Hussein, you cornered me, that's a very aggressive
yeah,
saying, right? And so it's interesting that they're very similar, but they are also very different.
yeah.
And the tone and the way that you say them is also different. So yeah, no, I think that's very interesting.
Yeah, it's and that's why I love these kind of conversations, because it for example, in this moment I'm discovering how I see these things,
Mm,
because I never had this conversation. I don't ask myself that question, right? And that's why I, like, if somebody were to ask me, uh, tell me, let's say, let's do a video about how you can become, let's say, fluent in the English language, for example. If there's no question, I was like, oh, do this, do that, read books, like, but I would not tell these stories. But having conversation with someone, there's something about it that I absolutely love, and that's why I think um, I hated COVID a lot. Obviously, aside from being a disease that kills people, it's a disease that stopped me from being able to have coffees with people where I enjoy
mhm.
the most. But that produced the podcast, so
Yeah. I want to I want to talk about why do people decide to start a company? And you referenced the person that you mentored who unfortunately took their own life. And startups and starting a business is very hard. And
mm,
there's, I think it's what 1 in 10 businesses actually succeed after the first year or something. Or, there's the odds seem insurmountable sometimes, you know, and
Yeah.
they seem very challenging. But yet there's this drive to do it, and you help people create their companies and to help them succeed. So what do you think it is about human nature that makes people want to create a company?
I think it's the natural inclination to create stuff and to do stuff in real life. Like it has. I think we there are two or a couple of things there. Number one, we make it more harder than it is. It's just a natural kind of thing. If you look at everything you do in life, like how many things you've attempted, a lot of things not only include failure as and mistakes as part of them, but a lot of things you kind of leave and they fail, and you kind of, you know, it blows over. It's just, you take them as natural because that's how you learn. That's a lot of the stuff you learned in life. Like, what do you use like 1% of what you learned, like a 10% maybe. uh, we The nature of it is that we do a ton of stuff in life because that's how we do. That's, we're exploring. And business is just like that. The only thing in business is that I think the only reason why, or one of the key reasons why, in business we don't we look at it this way is, number one, it's happening in our adult life. In adult life, you care about how you're seen. And when you care about how you're seen, you don't want to do you don't want to look like you're a failure, whatever that means. Whereas when you're a kid, you do a ton of stuff and you don't care. You break you break shit. You just be a kid, right? And you're sometimes celebrated by people, sometimes punished, but most of the time celebrated as like, oh, you're just a kid being a kid. And I think I that's how I approach doing business. I approach doing business as, it's just me being somebody who loves building products. That's how what I love doing, and that's what I'll always do. And that's there's no other way I can be. And I think one of the things that we created is that, no, you have another life where you can be an employee, where that's not true. You've always, for tens of thousands of years, what we've done is we wake up, we go see what life has to offer, maybe get some food, and go back to our home and eat it with our family and our community. That's what we've always done. It's within our nature. And that doesn't mean there's a dichotomy between being employed and building a business. I think the way that employment happens has a lot of errors in it, and there are companies that are trying to fix it, where create an environment for people to remain creative, so you can have an entrepreneurial mindset, which I think everyone has it. It's kind of like Picasso saying, everybody is an artist. We just kind of educate them out of being an artist. Everybody loves to create. Everybody loves to doodle. Everybody loves to create new ideas. Everybody has an idea. What we want is to create a channel for it. Unfortunately, right now, the one of the biggest challenges is to create a company. Not everyone is meant to do that. I don't mean by nature. I mean, like, anything that is hard, you need training for it, you need the persistence for it, and you need the environment for it. And not everyone has that. Not everyone has the training, not everyone has the persistence, and not everyone has the environment around them. And that's what I mean. You need all of those elements in order to help. You need education, you need the persistence and the understanding that this thing will take time. And then you need the environment. Think of learning anything, playing the guitar, you want to play the guitar, you need the education. You can't just hold the guitar and play. Like, you can, but that will take you longer, because the positioning of your fingers, the kind of where knowing where to start will definitely accelerate your journey. So training, and then you need to have the persistence. You need to know that somebody would tell you, hey, playing the guitar, it will take you like a few years before you can play a song comfortably or stuff like that, depending on what you're playing. Let's say classical guitar, it will take time. It's just because it's established. But nobody tells you that when you're doing a company. It's like, yeah, this company made it, and that's what you hear. This company reached $1 billion in 5 months. It's like, I can do that. And that desire and that kind of belief that you can do that is great. It's great to get you started, but then somebody has to educate us, like, listen, that's one out of millions of companies that are out there. And not every company is meant to do that, because the market has to be there. Then the environment around you. And when you're playing guitar, you need environment. Like you can't train if there's no space to train. You need, let's say, people encourage you, somebody listening to you, feedback, stuff like that. That is hard when you're doing business, especially the more rural you are, the more you're not connected to a startup community. These are the challenges that exist in startups because we don't talk about them like we talk about, let's say, learning the guitar or stuff like that. We think there's something magical about that. We've convinced ourselves that entrepreneurs are something unique, something rare. No, it's not. I've met thousands. I had the privilege of meeting thousands of entrepreneurs. If there's anything in common with between them, is there's nothing in common. They're just like every other person you meet. Everybody can offer something, and I've seen all kind of people from all kind of backgrounds building companies and failing, and equally succeeding without no reason or rhyme. These are just like, you can give the guitar to everyone. Some of them will make great music, some of them will make, average music, some of them will fail. It's just for similar kind of reasons. And some removing the fact of these outliers that don't belong. Again, like the exception doesn't disprove the rule, right? We're all human, capable of doing that. So I think that's the way. So I would say there are reasons why not to start a startup. Don't do a startup if your reason is like, hey, this is a great way to make money. No. Everybody who did a startup will tell you you can't make money doing a startup. It'll take you a long time to do that. There's faster ways to make money. Don't do it for the money. Don't do it for the status. Don't do it because you choose to do it, in the sense that you choose to go into, and you choose to, the kind of value you want to create and add to the world doesn't exist. You want to create, deliver, and capture value in unique ways that do not exist in the world, or you're not happy with the ways that exist in the world and you think you can offer something better. That's a great reason to start. Get the education, have the perseverance, and if either position yourself in an environment or create the environment to support yourself and support others. Launch Academy started by Ray, while trying to create the environment for himself and other entrepreneurs, ended up creating Launch Academy, and he helped thousands of entrepreneurs. So that's what I would think how people should look at a startup. It's a topic I'm very passionate about, and thanks for asking.
All right, your turn.
Final question, I think, because how much time do we have?
It's up to you. How much time do you have?
I have 2 minutes.
Okay, I'll answer a question in 2 minutes.
I postponed one of the. Can we, like, if we want, we can pick it up, or I can just cancel the meeting after. What do you?
It's up to you.
That's giving me for me a challenge. All right, let's do this question, and then I would love to come back for another episode. How about that?
Okay, sounds good.
All right. So, what is it that, let's say, what is it that you want for? This is like granular going. If you were to shape the world, if you were to write something and that writing becomes reality, what would be the story of the world that you would tell in the future?
It would be around the importance of journalism and communication. So I believe that, I don't know how this exactly would look like, but something I would like to convince the world that journalism is worth spending money on. It's worth, because right now we look at journalism as something free that we find on Facebook, on social media, on apps, and it takes a lot of money to create this content where somebody has to be paid to go interview people, craft it, put together, it needs to be edited, and then put out into the world, right? And it used to be that you'd have to have a subscription to a newspaper. You used to pay money to, for the TV channel, however it was sent to you, right? And now we just expect it for free. And that has created a huge deficit in the journalism world and I think this, you were talking earlier about political issues and how, you're very passionate about it. And the world we live in is very, divided. And it's not only to do how journalism is communicated to us, but I think a large part of that is that we don't have that really high quality journalism that we used to have. We have people trying to do quick and dirty news stories that are not fact checked properly, that are not in depth, and they are then sent out into the world as reality, and it's not. And then people start to believe them, and then they take sides, and then they start fighting with other people on other sides, and it doesn't create a very good environment. So how I'd like to create the world is where we have a very strong journalism center, and that, and it doesn't, it's a very hard thing to create, first off, because there's never like an ultimate truth, or there's never a one side to story, and people will always take what they want and leave other things. And so, but if we could have as unbiased journalism as possible, then I think that would create a way better world, where we are listening to the other side, we are learning from them, and we may not always believe what they say, or we may never, take what they say to be truth, but we can understand them. And I think that is what is missing in journalism today, is that we're just piping out this rhetoric of, this side did this side did that, and that does not bring us together. And I think with the challenges we're facing with climate change, with COVID, with a whole myriad of different things that are happening in the world today, we cannot afford to be this divided. We need to come together to solve them. We can't just, Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, I think they're doing some really amazing work, especially Elon Musk, in terms of fighting climate change with Tesla. But we cannot rely on these people to, solve our problems for us. We need to come together as a community, and we're just not doing that. And I think the way we do that is through quality journalism. And I don't think a lot of people realize that, and how much journalism plays a huge part in our world today, right? And I think Facebook has kind of, we've had this conversation, but it's kind of filled that vacuum. It's kind of taken over the role of journalism, and I think that's extremely, extremely dangerous, because Facebook doesn't care about journalism. It doesn't really, like, my personal opinion, it doesn't really care about the truth. They're not a very ethical company, and we need all that in a journalism company, and it's not Facebook. And I don't know exactly what that looks like, but I know that we are desperately in need of that. So I think, if I could change the world and have a singular story, it would be that we need a company that produces ethical, unbiased journalism that we can consume.
Oh boy, you opened a can of worms. Okay, so I canceled my 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 meeting, so I can continue that. I have I have I have a I have a take on this that
Go ahead.
I think, number one, when it comes to journalism, I think the challenge with I think the story is missing something. So let's take journalism and divide it into and speaking from someone who's speaking from outside, obviously, and speaking from someone who was in a country where all the major papers were controlled by the government, an authoritarian government. So I think journalism, you have the journalists who are kind of, that's where the journalism is decentralized. You have journalists to people who can write, okay? And then there is the medium itself. So whether it's video, written, and then there is the journalistic bodies. Let's say in this case, New York Times, Washington Post, let's say journals basically as part of the channels. I think what used to happen is you had a lot of let's say journalistic bodies, but they were highly decentralized. So there is, let's say, there's the local newspaper, and the competition for breaking a story. Obviously, let's say if somebody suppressed, because listen, powers, let's say the people who are powerful in the world, what you call them, elite, powerful, corporations, governments, people who have power, do not want, let's say, to have that power be diminished. And having a bad story written about you is some form of diminishing that power. So they will seek to kind of suppress that. There's no conspiracy. It's just natural how people always done throughout our lives. Like that's what people do. People with power will always want to maintain power. Anything as a threat to that, they will strive to suppress it. That's how it is. Um, that's before the First Amendment and the freedom of speech. Like people will always done that. It's not because we have freedom of speech or we don't. It's like people try to make it like that, a historical kind of story. People with power will always suppress people, other stories about them to maintain that power and keep people who are under them. So I think that always happened, but journalists had different, like if you're suppressed here, they will go somewhere else. And of course, journalists kind of put their life on the line. Journalists who are doing that, not every journalist. There are journalists who, write kind of, I don't know, stories about the community, whatever. Like, fine, that's what you want to do. It's like there are different levels, and there's nothing wrong with that. But that's what it is. Not journalists in general. It's important to have that kind of. We're talking about reporting journalism or investigative journalism that kind of really uncover the things that otherwise would not be possible. I think they're essential to our world. Do I really want to know about what Kim Kardashian meant? No, I think that's stupid. Kind of. It's not journalism. That's not when we talk about journalism. That's kind of saying the news. Like you have ability to write and you kind of write about the news, like your news kind of thing. Not really interesting for me. So I think that is still there because people are still there. People have different interests, like in everything. People still have we have still great journalists. So I think journalism is not at risk. What at risk right now is how the power structures are. It's like, so for example, I would say the medium within which you communicate are now just like before. So for example, what happened with journalistic entities, they started eating up those small journalism, or these guys would go out of business because of the business model was threatened and they don't evolve enough. And there's no support from the community. So we started getting more and more concentration, just like what happened with TV channels and stuff like that. And that is where it starts, because now people with power do not have to control a lot of people. Just like it's the opposite of blockchain comes about and distributes the power that exists in, let's say, several computers which you can control, but now tens of thousands of computers is very, very hard to control and hack. Similar way, think of it as hacking. People with money, they will use that money to hack the journalistic and come down on them, because also there are people with power there and say, listen, if you threaten my power here, here's how I'll threaten your power. So they end up suppressing the stories and they never come out. All right. Or they, if they come out in a different way, they lose their leverage. A story coming out at New York Times have obviously, whether people like it or not, it just have more resonance. It has have more authenticity, uh, perceived, of course. So and then there are the mediums. The mediums right now just became like that, but they're different name, like YouTube. YouTube suppresses. Facebook is another medium, also controlled by people of power. So I think journalism itself, from journalists themselves, haven't changed in the sense that people would want to investigate and write. I think the medium has changed significantly, whereas multiple channels of medium, but still the same level of control of people who do not want you to do that. That's in addition to having the algorithms control that. So it gives more resonance to things that are more sensational, which drives people to sensationalize. Because what happens is, part of those journalists, there are still people who are, in any field, there are people who are kind of uh, true to the essence and the spirit of the profession that they're in. But there are people who are, shitheads, like they don't give a shit, even though they have the skill set. But like, oh, I can sensationalize this and I can earn more money. Great, let's do it. And what ends up happening is all of these things ends up taken away from the field, and you get people saying, oh, journalists, there's no point, or journalism has lost its credibility, which is bullshit. There are some people who lost credibility, some, just like in everything. It's kind of like saying all politicians are bad or all
Mm.
lawyers are assholes. Okay, it's just the same bullshit generalization. There are people that are good and bad in every profession. It's what the environment is amplifying. And right now we live in a world where whatever we're amplifying are the worst of us. The world is structured to amplify the worst of us. Like Elon Musk is a shithead, okay? He's might be very smart, but it's a big fucking shithead.
Mm-hmm.
The same thing with Jeff Bezos. Somebody sitting on hundreds of billions of dollars, okay, should not exist, honestly. Like it's just insane. He doesn't need it, he can't use it, and he has enormous amount of power over hundreds of millions of people. That should not exist.
Mm.
And aside from that, he's a shithead. Like everything he does is actually bad, like suppressing his workers, having his workers, piss in bottles. Like that person should not be revered for anything. Okay, that person should be kind of diminished and what is it, demeaned? Is that a word? Like, like you should look at him with disgust,
Mm-hmm.
aside from any, because of the way that he's creating. And that's even, like, if you look at someone who forces someone else to live in horrible conditions and forces them to live, like, have the conditions that these workers have. If they have one worker, you would look at disgust upon them. How about somebody who is capable but unwilling to kind of alleviate that, and it will not hurt him by the slightest? Like it would not even, like it would even like scratch, is that, like, that's even more disgusting. So I think somebody like him is completely disgusting. I think the same thing of Elon Musk. He's completely, like, as a person, he's absolutely disgusting for me. I would never even want to put them on a pedestal at all. Like they don't even shine a light. Listen, Steve Jobs was all kind of horrible things. Let's say people say he's horrible boss, whatever. But he had a philosophy. He had something to add, and he never ever used his money to kind of suppress people. When he fired people, he fired them because they did not align with his vision of the company, not because he wanted more money. So that, to me, why he's not even at a level of those. Yes, he was a billionaire, but he's never used his power that way. These
Mm-hmm.
guys are using all their power to make society worse. And especially Elon Musk, when he did with what he did in Bolivia, like he supported the coup in Bolivia. I
Hmm.
don't know how anybody in their right mind can think of anything other than this disgusting person. So these are my thinking, and I think those people have enormous amount of power and definitely ruining journalism, because they are using, you can bet they're using that power to suppress all kind of stories about them, to go after the people who, let's say, in their words, smear them, so we don't hear about their stories. So these are some of some of the challenges as well, that people with power have more power and they're suppressing and hurting journalism. That's my take. That's my rant.
You mentioned blockchain. Do you think that can help journalism? And I think I mentioned that one of the problems with journalism is it's very biased. So with using blockchain technology, can we get closer to the truth? Is that something that's even possible?
I think there has never been, I think, a time where we had some, like, objective truth is objective truth. You can verify it with facts, whatever, but even that is being challenged, and it's been challenged all over the world, but now more aggressively on a wider scale. But we know throughout life, like, nothing is like, you know people has been able to lie. The people at the time, it was, if you had a printing press and you can print more, you're able to lie, and you spread your lies. Hence the church, or any religion, if you wish. uh, give any religion. I don't know if we want to get into that waters, but like, you can publish whatever you want to publish, and if you have the power. So um, I think what, maybe there's a chance with blockchain, uh, to come back to a world where things don't spread. So what blockchain does as a technology is decentralize things, takes the center and decentralize. So think of Facebook becoming 10,000 Facebooks, okay? And what that does, it eliminates the power of the certain group of people like Mark Zuckerberg and the people there in the in name of profit. And I want to name them like, notice I said, for example, Elon Musk or whatever, I named them disgusting people. I didn't name them evil. Okay. Because it's not about them being evil. It's about the ability to do harm. So with centralization, you have higher ability to do harm. Centralization of finance, centralization of computing power, and that's what those people are able to do because of the centralization of their power. They have they can do that. There are certain people, their board of directors or the senior executives, who are making decisions that impact billions of people, and that is the challenge. With decentralization, you don't have that. You don't have billion like a group of people that can impact billions of people. You have it's decentralized to tens of thousands of people, if not hundreds of thousands of people. Now have a vote, have a say, and usually when you have groups of people like we saw, like for example, yeah, we saw the rise of let's say shitheads in the states and people who are and but a lot of those people are sometimes misinformed and tricked into doing stuff. So if you want to really talk about like people who are pure shitheads, okay, they're few. Societies are generally more progressive. Why? Because progress helps most of them. So all they can do is kind of like trick them, and centralization enables them to do that.
Mm.
Decentralization gives people the ability to lead again, to democratize kind of the decision making. And with that, the hope, if we democratize decision making and people still choose worse stuff, then we deserve what's coming our way. Let's face it, But if we democratize the way, and I think there's a lot of in the past few years there's a lot of blame on people, like how can people be, and I've been like guilty with that, but thinking about it and adopting more the blockchain way of thinking is that if we think about it, people generally are more progressive. If you look at every kind of decision in the US, let's take US, because US Americans are usually kind of ostracized and like talked about as being like, oh, these stupid people. But if you look, actually, that's not true. If you look at all the decisions like Medicare for all, like education, canceling the debt, wars, the general consensus, like always 70%, 80% are all against, let's say, wars, for helping people, for like they're for that. But the politicians are disconnected from what their constituents are asking for. So it's not the American people, it's those in power. So by decentralizing the power, by decentralizing the ability to make decisions, you give way to those groups of people to control their destiny. So you can do that with finance, which is very powerful. You can do that as well with, let's say, decentralizing Facebook. Now, whether we're going to get there, because you have enormous amount of powerful people, or a few powerful people with enormous amount of resources fighting against that, co-opting, let's say, blockchain. And blockchain is a very powerful technology to co-opt. When you co-opt it, you have even more control.
Mm.
So Facebook, which is trying right now with Libra, is trying to kind of co-opt, let's say, decentralization. Everybody's trying to do that. What ends up happening is you have even more control, because you have for example, if you have a decentralized a central currency that works on blockchain, you can literally shut down. Let's say you have $100,000 today. Tomorrow, the government doesn't like you, or somebody doesn't like you who's well connected. They can shut down your money. You can't use your money anymore. You don't have it. That is not possible today as fast as, let's say, there are, let's say, certain gateways, still, let's say, not in an ideal society, but there is that. So there are these things. Who knows what's going to happen? So can blockchain help? Absolutely. The right blockchain. Again, blockchain is just like any other technologies. How it's used, there are different kind of implementations of blockchain. So can it help in a hopeful, correct implementation? Yes, blockchain can be a huge force to democratize decision making, democratize access to different things, democratize power, and democratize kind of wealth and equality between people, which I think is very, very helpful. Imagine people, voting right now. If you look at, let's say, this the thing that's happening with Black Lives Matter, for example, or stuff like that. Like imagine people having a say in those policemen that actually commit, that are supposed to protect the community and don't, or having a say in the trials, and people, let's say, what they did, have access to the facts and can actually vote on something if somebody is with, you know, willing to work, or stuff like that, should work. But what's happening right now, people are fired from one police department and then they go work in another police department and do the same thing. So stuff like that becomes even harder when you have access to facts, access to democratized access, and democratized ability to participate in governing. Self-governance is very powerful.
Awesome.
Too much information?
No,
My question now:
your question.
why the heck are you always in a kitchen? Is it because of the sound kind of quality?
It's just my studio.
Your studio is a kitchen. Do you cook?
I do not very well, but I do.
Not very well. Okay.
Is
I
that your
never eat pizza
question?
when I cook. So, what are the things of life that you enjoy doing that are not, you know, the work or whatever, like stuff that you enjoy doing when you're not working and when you're not like busy being the professional you?
Problem is it's all intertwined. I love stories.
Hmm.
Stories are so much a part of my life, and I think they're super important. So, I mean, storytelling is always, whether it's work related or personal, I just like good stories. So, I mean, I love reading, I love movies, I love Netflix. Um, I mean, I think, I'm watching Star Trek right now, and I mean, it's not great storytelling, but it's good enough. And
Which one? Which one are you watching?
I'm watching Voyager.
Oh, okay.
I've gone through, the reason I was watching Star Trek was because I wanted to watch the Picard, which came out. And so I went through all of Next Generation and then watched Picard, and I just kind of continued. But yeah, I think storytelling is so important, and it's such a necessary part of life. And if you can weave a good story, then you can actually do so much. I think you can succeed in so many different avenues of life. You can get jobs, you can, persuade, convince, you can sell stuff, you can market with good stories. Um, yeah, I think the fact that we remember stories is is super important. So I'm always up for a good story. I'm always up for, learning through storytelling. It's a way that I learn. I'm not very good with learning facts, figures, dates, that sort of thing, but you tell me a good story and I'll remember it. And so I think that is key. And so, yeah, even though I'm not working, I'm always up for a good story. I don't know if that answers your question, but
Yeah.
yeah.
So, did you see the latest kind of, what is it? Star Trek Galactic? What is it, the new one?
There's
There's the latest one.
Discovery. Is Discovery there?
Discovery. Yeah.
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 No, I haven't seen it yet.
That's good.
Yeah.
My challenge with visual storytelling is I can't stand looking at old stuff. Like
Mm.
when it's old, I can't go back. There's no, I don't have a sense of nostalgia. I think because
Mm.
I like new stuff and I'm a techie. So at the time they're like, oh my God, they're amazing.
Yeah, no,
But
for sure.
but
I
now it's
agree.
like, huh, this is really like I'm noticing. Like I can see there's the green screen here. That
Yeah, no, I do
there's
that
so
too.
many.
But okay,
Uh,
let's do one more question each and then we'll wrap it up.
all
How's
right,
that?
fine,
Okay.
fine.
My question is, so you've done 40 podcasts, 40 plus podcasts,
Mm.
interviewed 40 amazing entrepreneurs. What has your biggest takeaway from that experience been?
My biggest takeaway from it is that First of all, there's so much to people that every time I have a conversation, a lot of those people I knew and I've had conversations with. So there's a ton um, to learn and to glean from every conversation, which is why it's great to have those conversations again and again and again. So I think that's pretty cool, and I would want to do it again every time, actually. So yeah, I thought that it's great to have a conversation with them. It's great to have another conversation as well. Like it's always kind of, oh wow, I wanna have that conversation with them. So that is one of the biggest takeaway. The other thing is um, we are all somehow the same. So I've spoken from the president of um, the Capilano University, for example, to an entrepreneur that is just starting, to someone who's heading the community, head of in a Innovate BC, for example. So different people, uh, different backgrounds, working on different things, but somehow all of us get challenges regardless of where our level in life. There's a challenge when you're there. um, it's kind of like, if you think of my metaphor of always climbing Mount Everest, like I always think of anything like climbing Mount Everest, like the people who are at the bottom having challenge that has to do with where they are at the bottom. The people in the middle are facing challenges that has to do with middle, and the people at the top are facing challenges when they're at the top. There's never a time where you stop facing challenges. Even the people at the summit, like if you know anything about Everest, which I know quite a bit because I keep reading about it. If you're at the summit, you can only stay for a while before you die. Basically, you have to go down, and also it's equally, some people die on the way down, not necessarily on the way up.
Mm.
So in a similar fashion, we have our perceptions about what people are dealing. Like you come into the conversation, and that's, I think, one of also my learnings is I have to come into those conversations without perceptions, but with complete. And I usually do that with conversations, which I think uh, makes it more fun. You you can have, of course, I have perceptions about people and where they are, but I come into those conversations without those perceptions. I come in thinking, well, what do I want to really learn? And I just follow what the conversation tells me. Like sometimes I even have some prepared questions, very few, but then I jump in and it's like, oh, tell me about that. That's exciting. And sometimes people, like, I know my wife said, you say the same things every time, in the sense like, oh, this is a really interesting. I said, because it is. so um, so I think that's also interesting, where you come in and you have your perceptions about people, and then you completely discover that those perceptions are not accurate. Like they are just like you in a sense, and they're facing just different kind of challenges because they're living a different life. And it's so thrilling, exciting to do that. And the purpose of those meetings was to provide people with stories that they can relate to, rather than me telling them. And that's, I think, one of the key things for me, is that my team's always pushing me, like, say stuff, because I like to talk. Like, go on YouTube and do that. And my biggest challenge is, I'd rather you hear it from somebody else. I don't want to become the person you go to. I don't want you to think of me like, oh, Hussein is the guru to go to. Instead, let me be the facilitator to learn from others and their story. That's, I think, where I stand. Not to say that I don't want to be your guru. Of course, I want more money, but this is better. Feels better. Well,
Great.
okay. One question for you. I know,
Final
like,
question.
silent. Why is he not saying anything? Like, why is he jump? I'm forgetting where we are. Okay, last question for you. Um, what has been the biggest, uh, let's say, the biggest thing that you can take away from our relationship, like from our interactions throughout, like, to you, regardless of this is not a, you can obviously spend the next 15 minutes tell me how awesome I am, but that's not what I'm saying. Is that from a relationship where we met in a certain way, we had our interactions, what was like for you, like something that you got that you think, oh, you know what, you would want to get more even of, or something like that. Curious.
That's a very good question. I think I I know we spoke about this when you interviewed me on your podcast, but I would say, and I'm not like hyperbolizing this because it's actually true, but I think one of the defining moments in my life was I was working at Starbucks and just not getting where I wanted to be. I was writing, I was producing movies, but they weren't as successful as I wanted them to be. I felt like I wasn't getting where I wanted to be fast enough. And I was making ends meet at Starbucks, and not like financially not doing all that great, but not do I was okay too. But I met you because I wanted to expand my horizon. I wanted more and I wanted to be better. And I remember kind of just being at a very low point. And funny enough, I remember this very distinctly. We were in the Starbucks in West Van. I basically told you all this and saying how I was not, I just was not happy. I was not succeeding in the things I wanted to succeed in, and I was not doing the things I wanted to do, and I was not enjoying life. And a lot of people would have just patted me on the back and say, there, it'll get better, and give me a whole bunch of like tropes of how, how life should be. But I think the thing that I appreciate the most about you is the way that you cut through the bullshit and you get to the heart of the matter. And I remember you said, okay, so if you want to improve things, you need to do exactly what I say. And I'm like, oh, sure. Like, because I was just at such a low point, I would have done anything for practically. But I think it was the faith and trust that I'd put in a friendship at that point. And I actually, honestly, hadn't known you for that long, but I could see the authenticity of you, and I could see the willingness to help and just the person that you are. This is the pat on the back part of Hussein. But the other part of Hussein is like, yes, just the way that you cut through everything. You don't give this fluffy advice. You don't spend time saying, well, Joel, it's okay. You're okay and you're doing fine. But you're able to get to, like I said, the heart of the problem and give impactful advice straight away. The no bullshit advice, I like to say. And so he said, you need to do exactly what I say. And I was like, yes, I'll do exactly anything you say, I'll do. And then so he said, join Landmark. And at that point, you'd invited me a couple times, and I'd hum and haw. I'm like, I don't really want to do this self-help kind of stuff, and it seems like a lot of work, and I have to take an entire weekend, and there were 12-hour, 18-hour days. It's a lot of work. And I remember I felt trapped. I was like, shit, he had got me because I had said yes. I'm like, fine. And so I signed up for a Landmark and went through the forum, which is the 3.5 day intensive program, and got so much out of that. And ever since that moment, life has just gone up and up and up. I felt like that was definitely like a low point in my life. And so being able to continually climb higher and higher and reach higher objectives and reach new things. And now, like, I've got 2 companies. I'm doing fairly well. I get to work on great projects. I get to do this podcast. I think a lot of that honestly has to do with that moment in time. And so I think that if anybody could get somebody in their life that is, and you just did this recently, right? You asked me, do you want the fluffy answer or do you want the no bullshit answer, right? And I said, no bullshit. And you just like, it's like an arrow, like you just went right for the bullseye and you just hit it straight on. right? And so I really appreciate that about you, because it's a real difficult skill to have, because you do it with such empathy and such compassion. If most people did it like that, then you'd be like, oh, this person's just an asshole. They're just trying to, like, I mean, I think Tony Robbins, he has some good stuff, but sometimes he comes off as an asshole, right? Whereas I never get that from you. I never get that impression that you're this cocky asshole that just knows what to do and life is all grand and peaches and roses. So it's a difficult balance where you give me the hard truth, but yet do it with such love and knowledge and compassion that I know that you actually have my best interests at heart. And that the fact that you don't give me the fluffy answer is actually, because I know it's a lot harder for some people to give that ultimate truth, because it can be hurtful, it can be hard, and it can put the relationship at a risk, right? But you never do that. You always are willing to put that risk out there, and are able to impact people in ways that a lot of people aren't, because you have that hard truth about you. So thank you. I think we will end it there. Hussein,
That's a good way. That's a good way to
good way to end.
Thanks for sharing that. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think one of the biggest things, if I may say, before I let you go, is the ability. I've always appreciated people who put themselves out there and risk themselves to give me something that is worthwhile. I know my wife has done that. She's always been like my toughest critic, and while everybody else was like around me kissing my ass, and like,
it's hard, right? It's not always easy, especially to the people that you care about most.
And I hated that when she did it, like,
yeah, exactly.
I wanted to hear compliments. I wanted, like, why you're not complimenting me? And like, I realized that that's what I needed at the moment. I needed the hard truth. And I think these are people that are rare. And I've asked myself, who do I want to be for the people? And it's not always just like, it doesn't always. The other thing is that you sometimes fall flat on your face, kind of thing. So it includes a lot of risk, because we want to be liked, we want to maintain the relationship, we want to maintain that people around us who like us. But my question is, do I want somebody around me who likes me but they're like, life is shit, or do I want to enjoy people kind of flourishing in my presence? And I thought, and I once you taste that as well, it's a honestly, one of the things I want to add, it's a very, very selfish thing to do, because surrounding yourself with people that are kind of succeeding in your and around you, and kind of achieving stuff around you, is very addictive and very kind of fulfilling. So that's why I do it. Thanks for sharing that. That's great feedback. Great answer. Thanks for having me. This was a lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun, and I think it was super helpful to people listening and watching. For people who want to reach out to you, where can they find you?
LinkedIn. I am my new name is Dark Art Mentor, because my book is the dark art of life mastery. So LinkedIn, they can research my name. I think there's only 2 Hussein Hallaks in the world. One is a scientist in Israel. So he's done more than I do, like science stuff and whatever. And the other
to compete.
Yours truly. So you'll find me very easy. Search Hussein and you'll find this bald head. Hopefully, don't search for earlier photos of me with hair, please. Search for me on Google. You'll find me. I have or Hussein at HusseinHallak.com. That's my email. Very easy to find.
All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing all your wisdom and all your knowledge. And have a great rest of the day.
Thanks, buddy. Love the conversation.
Thank you for listening to Publishing for Profit. Please like and subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.